Hello, ladies and gentlemen tuning in to the channel. The Maid's secret daughter they try to hide. Today's story is titled, An 8-year-old Stopped a Billionaire. Her words exposed a terrifying secret. There are moments in life that look perfect on the outside, but underneath, something is quietly rotting. And sometimes, it takes a child to see what adults refuse to. Because children don't play politics, they don't fake smiles, and they don't lie when something feels wrong. This story begins on a bright Sunday morning, the kind of morning that feels like it was designed for happiness. A private chapel stood at the heart of a sprawling estate just outside Chicago. White roses lined the aisle. Soft violin music drifted through the air. Every detail was flawless, carefully planned, carefully controlled. At the center of it all stood Daniel Whitmore, a self-made billionaire known for building one of the largest logistics empires in the country. 2 years ago, Daniel had lost his wife to illness. Since then, he had become a different man, quieter, colder, distant even from his own son. But today was supposed to mark a new beginning. Beside him stood his new partner, Vanessa Clark. Elegant, composed, the kind of woman who seemed to belong in every room she entered. In her arms was a newborn baby boy, Ethan, their son, or at least that's what everyone believed. Guests whispered in admiration. A beautiful family. He finally moved on. Good for him. But not everyone was smiling. In the front row sat Lucas, Daniel's 10-year-old son. His small hands were clenched tightly in his lap, his eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't said a word all morning. And in the very back of the chapel, almost invisible among the staff, stood a little girl, 8 years old, wearing a simple dress that didn't quite fit. Her name was Lily Carter. She wasn't supposed to be here. Her mother worked in the Whitmore household, a quiet woman who kept her head down and never crossed lines. But Lily was different. She noticed things adults ignored, things they chose not to see. And for the past few weeks, something had been bothering her. Something about Vanessa, something about the baby. Something that didn't feel right. At first, she tried to ignore it, told herself she was just imagining things. But then she heard something, a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Words that didn't make sense at the time, but now, standing in that chapel, watching the ceremony unfold, they made perfect sense, and they terrified her. The pastor stepped forward, raising his voice gently as the room fell silent. We gather here today to bless this child, but Lily couldn't take it anymore. Her small hands clenched into fists. Her heart pounded so loudly it felt like everyone could hear it. She looked at Lucas, sitting alone, then at Daniel, smiling like everything was finally okay. And something inside her snapped. Before her mother could stop her, before anyone could react, Lily stepped out from the shadows. She walked down the aisle, past rows of stunned guests, past whispers and confused stares, until she stood right in front of one of the most powerful men in the city. Daniel frowned slightly, caught off guard. Hey, sweetheart, this isn't. But Lily didn't let him finish. She rose on her tiptoes, leaning close enough that only he could hear. And in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "That baby isn't yours." Below is a story submitted by a viewer who asked us to share it with you and gather your thoughts and advice in the comments below. And now, the story begins. For a brief moment, Daniel Whitmore thought he had misheard. The chapel was still filled with soft violin music, sunlight pouring through stained glass, guests seated in quiet admiration, but everything inside him had gone silent. That baby isn't yours. 6 simple words, spoken by an 8-year-old girl. Daniel slowly straightened his posture, his jaw tightening just enough that only someone close would notice. He looked down at Lily. Her face wasn't playful. It wasn't confused. It was serious, terribly serious. Children joked, children imagined things, but this didn't feel like imagination. Daniel, Vanessa whispered beside him, her smile still fixed but her eyes narrowing slightly. The pastor is waiting. He blinked, forcing himself back into the moment. Cameras were still rolling. Guests were watching. His business partners were here. He couldn't react, not yet. So he did what he had trained himself to do for decades. He performed. His hand rested gently on baby Ethan's head as the blessing continued. He smiled when he was supposed to smile. He nodded when he was supposed to nod. But inside, something had already broken. Because once doubt enters your mind, it doesn't leave. The ceremony ended to polite applause. Guests moved outside, toward the gardens where champagne and conversation waited. Daniel didn't follow immediately. Instead, he turned. Lily had already stepped back, her small figure retreating toward the rear of the chapel. Her mother grabbed her arm, whispering sharply, panic all over her face. Daniel watched that interaction carefully. Fear, not annoyance, not embarrassment. Fear. That was the first thing that didn't sit right. He made his way outside, greeting guests automatically. Hands shook his. Voices congratulated him. Smiles surrounded him. He looks just like you. Perfect little heir. Congratulations, Daniel. Every word felt heavier than the last. He kept scanning the crowd until he found them. Near the service entrance, partially hidden behind a column, Lily and her mother stood close together. Her mother looked like she was about to cry. Daniel excused himself mid-conversation and walked straight toward them. The moment they noticed him approaching, Lily's mother stiffened. Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry, she said quickly. She didn't mean, she just has a vivid imagination. Does she? Daniel interrupted, his tone calm, too calm. He knelt slightly, so he was eye level with Lily. Tell me exactly what you meant. Her mother shook her head desperately. Lily, don't, but Lily spoke anyway. Because it's true, she said, her voice steady despite everything. She's lying. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He asked quietly. Vanessa, Lily said. The name landed like a stone. Daniel didn't react outwardly, but inside, something shifted. Why would you say that? He asked. Lily hesitated for the first time, not from fear, but from choosing her words carefully. Because I heard her, she said. Daniel's eyes sharpened. Heard what? Lily swallowed. She was talking to someone. On the phone. She said you'd never find out. A cold feeling crawled up Daniel's spine. What exactly did she say? Lily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to remember. She said, he's too desperate for a family. He won't question anything. Daniel didn't move. Didn't breathe. Who was she talking to? He asked. I don't know, Lily admitted. But she sounded different. Not like she does around you. Behind them, Lily's mother whispered, please stop. But Daniel wasn't listening anymore. Because now, something else surfaced in his memory. Moments. Small ones. Vanessa avoiding doctor visits with him. Excuses about privacy. Late-night phone calls she brushed off. At the time, he had ignored them. Because he wanted to believe. Because he needed to believe. But now those moments didn't feel small anymore. They felt like pieces of something much bigger. Something dangerous. Daniel slowly stood. His gaze drifted across the estate, toward the house where Vanessa had just disappeared moments ago. And for the first time since meeting her, he wondered if he had ever really known her at all. Because if an 8-year-old girl was telling the truth, then everything he had rebuilt was about to collapse. And the most terrifying part? This might only be the beginning. Daniel didn't rush. That was the first thing that separated him from everyone else. When panic hit most people, they reacted. They exploded. They made noise. Daniel observed. He walked back toward the main house, slowly, deliberately, his expression controlled. Anyone watching him would still see the composed billionaire, the man who never lost control. But inside, his mind was running faster than it ever had. Every detail from the past year was being re-examined. Every conversation, every excuse, every smile Vanessa had ever given him. And for the first time, he questioned all of it. Inside the house, the air felt different. Quieter. He could hear faint footsteps upstairs, doors opening and closing. Vanessa. She had left the reception early. That alone was unusual. Daniel moved toward the grand staircase when he noticed someone sitting on the bottom step. Lucas, still in his formal suit, still small in a house that suddenly felt too large. Hey, Daniel said softly. Lucas looked up, his eyes red like he had been holding something in for a long time. Is it true? Lucas asked. Daniel froze. What do you mean? Lucas hesitated, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. She said she was going to tell you. Daniel felt the world tilt slightly. Who? Lily, Lucas said. She told me she couldn't keep it a secret anymore. Daniel's pulse spiked. What secret, Lucas? Lucas looked down at his hands. I saw someone, he said quietly. A man. Daniel didn't interrupt. Last month, when you were on that business trip, Vanessa met him outside. They were arguing. Daniel's fingers curled slightly at his side. Did you hear what they said? Lucas nodded slowly. He said, "You're getting greedy." And she said, "The plan doesn't work unless he believes it." The plan. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Pieces were starting to form a picture. A picture he didn't want to see. And you didn't tell me? Daniel asked, not accusing, just asking. Lucas's voice cracked. She told me you wouldn't believe me. She said, you needed the baby more than you needed me. That hit harder than anything else. Daniel dropped to his knees in front of his son. Hey, he said, his voice breaking slightly. That's not true. But even as he said it, he wondered if, in some way, it had been. Because he had been distant. He had been grieving. And maybe, just maybe, he had missed something he should have seen. Daniel pulled Lucas into a tight embrace. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have listened sooner. Upstairs, a door slammed. Both of them looked up. Vanessa. Daniel stood slowly. Something inside him had changed now. The doubt was no longer quiet. It was loud, clear, demanding answers. Stay in your room, Daniel told Lucas. Lock the door. Lucas nodded. Daniel turned and walked up the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, but also sharper, more focused. By the time he reached the top, he wasn't the grieving man anymore. He was the man who built an empire from nothing. And he was done being lied to. He stopped in front of the master bedroom door. It was locked. Vanessa, he called out calmly. We need to talk. Silence. Then movement inside. A voice low rushed. She was on the phone. Daniel's eyes darkened. Open the door, he said. Another pause. Then, click. The door unlocked. And whatever was waiting on the other side was no longer something he could ignore. Vanessa stood in the doorway, no longer the composed woman from the chapel. Her expression was tight, her posture rigid, and she was holding the baby, Ethan, closer than usual, like a shield. You're overreacting, she said immediately before Daniel even spoke. Whatever that child said, it's ridiculous. Daniel stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Who is he? Daniel asked calmly. Vanessa blinked. What? The man Lucas saw. Her composure cracked, just slightly. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, turning away. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Then let's make this simple, he said. We'll do a DNA test. The room went completely still. Vanessa turned back slowly. A test, she repeated. Yes. She let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. You're seriously going to humiliate me because of something a child said? Are you worried about the result? Daniel asked. That's when her eyes changed. Just for a second. Fear. It was quick, almost invisible, but Daniel saw it, and that was enough. This is insane, she said, her voice rising. I just gave you a son. Then you have nothing to worry about, Daniel replied. Silence stretched between them. Finally, fine, she snapped. Do your test. Daniel nodded once. Good. That night, everything changed. No more guests, no more music, no more pretending. Just silence and truth waiting to surface. The test was conducted privately, handled by someone Daniel trusted completely. No media, no outside involvement, just facts. Hours passed. The house felt colder than ever. And then, early morning, the call came. Daniel stood alone in his study as he answered. Daniel, the doctor said quietly. I ran the results twice. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. And a pause. Then, you are not the father. Daniel closed his eyes. There it was. The truth. Cold. Final. But the doctor wasn't finished. There's something else, he added. Daniel's eyes opened slowly. What? Another pause. And then the words that would change everything again. She isn't the mother either. Daniel's breath caught. What did you just say? The baby is not biologically related to either of you. Silence filled the room. Not anger. Not shock. Something deeper. Something darker. Because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was something else entirely. Something far more dangerous. Daniel slowly lowered the phone. And for the first time, he realized this wasn't about a broken relationship. This was about a lie so big, it could destroy lives. And somewhere inside that house, the woman responsible was still standing there. Daniel didn't move for a long time. The words echoed in his head. Not his child, not her child. Then whose child was it? That question changed everything. Because this wasn't just deception anymore. This was something criminal. He picked up his phone again and made a call. "Lock down the property," he said. "No one leaves." His voice was calm, but there was something in it now, something colder. Minutes later, he walked upstairs again. Vanessa was pacing, waiting. "What did it say?" she demanded the second he walked in. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, he saw through her. "You want to tell me the truth?" he asked. She hesitated. "Just enough." "No," he continued. He stepped closer. "Then I will." Her breathing quickened. "The baby isn't mine," Daniel said. She flinched. "And he's not yours either." Silence. Then, everything broke. Vanessa's legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed onto the floor. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." But her voice didn't sound convinced. It sounded defeated. Daniel stood over her. "Where did you get him?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Was it money?" he continued. "A deal? A trade?" Still silence. Then finally, "I didn't have a choice," she said. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You always have a choice." Tears streamed down her face. "I was pregnant," she said. At first, it was real. Daniel didn't react. "I lost the baby," she continued. Halfway through, the room felt suffocating. And then, Daniel asked. She laughed weakly. Then he came up with a solution. Daniel's eyes sharpened. She looked up at him. Fear filled her eyes now. "Paul," she whispered. And just like that, the story became even darker than Daniel ever imagined. The name hung in the air like a storm about to break. "Paul." Daniel didn't repeat it. He didn't need to, because the moment Vanessa said it, everything shifted from suspicion to confirmation. "There's more," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't understand how deep this goes." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Then explain it to me." Vanessa wiped her face, her composure completely gone now. "After I lost the baby, I panicked," she admitted. "I knew if I told you, everything would fall apart. You'd leave. I'd lose everything." Daniel said nothing. "I told Paul," she continued. "He said we could fix it, that there were ways." Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. "What kind of ways?" he asked. Vanessa hesitated. Then finally, "He knew people," she whispered. "People who could find a baby." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Find," he repeated. She couldn't meet his eyes. "They said it was legal," she rushed. "They said everything would be handled. Papers, records, everything. No one would ever know." But even she didn't sound like she believed that anymore. Daniel stepped back slowly. This wasn't just manipulation. This was organized, calculated, planned. "Where is he?" Daniel asked. "I don't know," Vanessa said quickly. "He handles everything. I never ask questions." Daniel didn't believe that. Not fully. But he didn't push further. Not yet. Because right now, he needed facts. Within minutes, Daniel had security moving. Phone records, surveillance footage, financial trails. Everything Vanessa had touched in the past year was now being pulled apart. Hours passed. The house felt like a command center instead of a home. And then, the first real lead came in. "Sir," Daniel's head of security said. "We found him." Daniel looked up. "Paul Keller," the man continued. "Former attorney. Disbarred for fraud. Has connections to multiple suspicious adoption cases." Daniel's expression darkened. "Where is he?" "On the move," the man said. "But we have a location from earlier today." Daniel stood immediately. "Send it to me." But before he could move, another message came through. Something else. "Sir, there's more," the man added carefully. Daniel paused. "What?" "The baby." Daniel's heart tightened. "What about him?" "There's no official record," the man said. "No verified birth file. No hospital match." Daniel went still. "No record?" "That's not possible," he said quietly. But deep down, he already knew. Because if the baby wasn't theirs, and there was no record, then this child didn't legally exist. Which meant one thing. Somewhere, there was a mother who had no idea where her child was. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief second, and when he opened them, he was no longer just looking for answers. He was looking for justice. Find her, Daniel said. Whoever she is, find her. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about a child who had been taken from someone. And the truth? It was bigger than any of them had realized. And just as Daniel stepped forward, another call came in, one that would change the direction of everything again. The hospital room was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel stood just outside the doorway, holding the baby. No, not Ethan anymore, just a child that didn't yet have a real identity. Inside the room sat a young woman. Pale, weak, exhausted. Her name was Maya Carter, Lily's cousin. That alone had been enough to shake Daniel. But it wasn't the whole truth. Not even close. She's been here for weeks. The investigator had explained earlier. Complications after childbirth. She was told her baby didn't survive. Daniel's grip on the child tightened slightly at that memory. Because that wasn't just a lie. That was cruelty, pure and deliberate. Maya hadn't even noticed him at first. Her eyes were distant, lost in something heavier than exhaustion. Grief, the kind that sits in your chest and refuses to move. Lily stepped forward before anyone else could. Mom, that's her, she whispered to her mother. Her voice was soft but certain. Maya slowly looked up. Her eyes landed on Lily first, then shifted to the baby, and everything changed. She didn't speak right away, didn't move, just stared, like her mind couldn't process what she was seeing. They told me, she whispered. They told me he didn't make it. Daniel stepped into the room. They were wrong, he said quietly. Her eyes filled instantly. No, that's not. She shook her head, tears already falling. That's not possible. Daniel walked closer, carefully. He's yours, he said. That's when she broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just completely. Her hands trembled as she reached forward. Daniel gently placed the baby into her arms. And the moment their skin touched, everything else disappeared. The room, the people, the past. It was just a mother and her child, and a truth that had been stolen finally returned. I thought I lost you, she whispered, holding him close. I thought I lost everything. Lily stood beside her, watching quietly. There was no confusion in her eyes. No soap, just a quiet understanding. Like somehow she had known all along. Daniel stepped back. This wasn't his moment. It never was. But something inside him shifted as he watched. Because for the first time since his wife passed, he didn't feel empty. He felt present, alive, and maybe, just maybe, a little less lost. But the story wasn't finished yet. Because while one truth had been revealed, there was still another question waiting. Who was the father? And why did that answer feel even more complicated? 3 days later, the house felt different. Not quieter, not louder, just real. No side smiles, no hidden conversations, no pretending. Just truth. Daniel stood in his study, looking out over the estate as the morning light settled across the lawn. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed. Lucas, you're thinking about them, aren't you? He asked. Daniel turned slightly. Yeah, he admitted, because it had been a lot. Vanessa had been taken into custody for fraud-related charges. Paul Keller had been caught attempting to leave the state. And Maya? She was recovering. With her child. Her real child. But that wasn't the part that stayed with Daniel. What stayed with him was Lily, an 8-year-old girl who saw what no one else did, who spoke when no one else would, who risked everything just to tell the truth. I should have listened sooner, Daniel said quietly. Lucas shook his head. You listened when it mattered. Daniel looked at his son, and for the first time in a long time, he saw him clearly, not as a reminder of the past, not as someone fragile, but as someone strong, someone who had endured more than he should have. I'm not going to miss things like that again, Daniel said. Lucas smiled slightly. Good, because some lessons don't come easy. They come through mistakes, through pain, through moments you wish you could undo. But they stay, and they change you. Downstairs, laughter echoed faintly. Lily. Daniel walked toward the staircase and looked down. She was sitting at the table with her mother and Lucas, talking like everything was normal, like the world hadn't just shifted around them. And maybe that was the point, because for her, it wasn't about drama. It wasn't about consequences. It was about doing what was right, no matter how small she seemed, no matter how big the person she stood up to was. Daniel leaned against the railing, and for the first time in a long time, he understood something clearly. Family isn't built on appearances. It's not built on control or perfection. It's built on truth, on trust, on the people who choose to stand by you, even when it's hard, even when it costs them something. He looked at Lucas, at Lily, at the quiet, imperfect, real life unfolding in front of him. And he knew this was the beginning of something different, something honest, something real. Because sometimes it doesn't take power to change everything. It just takes one voice, brave enough to speak. And the question is, if you were in that moment, would you have listened? This story left a strong impression on me, not because of the wealth, the scandal, or the dramatic twists, but because of one simple truth. Honesty can come from the most unexpected place, and when it does, it has the power to change everything. What stands out most is the courage of a child who chose to speak up when something didn't feel right. In real life, many people ignore their instincts, especially when facing authority or social pressure. This story reminds us that intuition matters, and that silence can sometimes allow injustice to grow. One of the most important lessons we can take from this is the value of paying attention, truly paying attention to the people around us. Daniel was not a bad person, but he was distracted by grief, ambition, and the desire to rebuild his life quickly. That emotional vulnerability made him overlook warning signs. In our own lives, we may also miss important truths when we're too focused on what we want to believe instead of what is actually happening. Learning to pause, observe, and question can protect us from deeper pain later. Another powerful takeaway is the importance of listening, especially to those who are often overlooked. Children, quiet individuals, or people in less powerful positions may see things more clearly because they're not influenced by ego or expectation. When we create an environment where people feel safe to speak, we open the door to truth and prevent harm before it grows. The story also highlights accountability. When the truth came out, it forced action. In life, avoiding uncomfortable truths may feel easier in the moment, but facing them is the only path to real resolution and growth. Justice, healing, and trust can only exist when truth is acknowledged. Most importantly, this story teaches us about compassion and responsibility. A child who had no voice was given one again because someone chose to act. That is a powerful reminder that our actions can directly impact the lives of others, often in ways we don't fully understand. This story is created for educational purposes, aiming to highlight human values, ethical awareness, and the importance of truth in everyday life. From my personal perspective as the writer of this content, I believe this story reflects how fragile trust can be when built on illusion instead of truth. I see it as a reminder that emotional pain can cloud judgment if we are not careful. I feel that the child's courage represents a kind of honesty that many adults lose over time. I think this story encourages us to slow down and truly observe the people around us. I believe it shows that power does not equal awareness or wisdom. I see the father's transformation as a meaningful lesson about growth and accountability. I think the story emphasizes that truth may hurt, but it ultimately protects. I believe compassion and action can restore what was lost. I see this as a reflection of how silence can be dangerous. And most importantly, I believe this story encourages us to choose truth, even when it is uncomfortable. The story above contains some creatively adapted elements and AI-assisted development, intended to provide engaging entertainment while delivering meaningful and inspiring life lessons to the audience. Disclaimer: this content is for educational and storytelling purposes only. Any resemblance to real events or individuals is coincidental, and the narrative is designed to convey moral lessons, not to represent factual events.